Hello everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Ron Paul channel. There was a recent article in the New York Times that got a lot of attention and had to do with libertarianism. And the title of this article is, "Has the Libertarian Moment Finally Arrived?" The big question he was trying to answer is libertarianism becoming significant and changing the way Washington is working. And he dwells on whether or not and how much libertarian influence there is in the Republican Party, and he leaves it there. But I think that's missing a major point. Libertarianism isn't a political party. It's an idea. It's ideological. Our country more or less started out with a libertarian moment with the Declaration of Independence and the writing of the Constitution. The emphasis on personal liberty like it had never been emphasized before. And in many ways, we lived with that ideology for a long time. For over 100 years, that basically was the thrust of our society. And it wasn't limited to one party. But about 100 years ago, during the time when we introduced the income tax and also the Federal Reserve System and changing our foreign policy, that was the introduction to interventionism. And it was during this period of time that we started planning the economy, printing the money, manipulating, spending money, teaching that deficits didn't matter, and we've lived with that a long time. Now we're seeing a reaction to all this, and that is the libertarian moment that they're talking about. I don't see it as a moment. I see libertarianism and ideas as being very, very important and very influential, but it's usually a transition that we look at. The interventionism, although it started pretty seriously at the beginning of the last century, it just built and built and built until we saw the climactic end as we're witnessing right now. And this is what's happening to libertarianism. Libertarianism and the libertarian ideas have been revived in the modern age, probably in the late 1950s with organizations like the Foundation for Economic Education and the various libertarian groups. But the seeds have been planted during all that time, and what individuals are seeing is the results of those seeds being planted having an influence on our government. But most people think, especially in Washington and news media, that it's always a contest between Republicans and Democrats. They never stop and think, interventionism is what controls Republicans and Democrats and most of the independents, and that's what we have lived with. Now we have this message, an idea whose time has come, that of individual liberty, and it's offering these ideas, and they're being very, very well received. And one of the reasons for this is the obvious failure of what has been going on these last 100 years. And also a reflection of the failure of government authoritarianism that has existed for thousands of years. So I see us entering an age which is very exciting, very important. It has a libertarian message, but the effect on the Republican Party, that is so minor compared to what I'm thinking about. Because if libertarianism has its moment, believe me, it's not going to be a faction in the Republican Party that finally wins control of the party and change the world. It's going to be like Keynesianism. Keynesianism is endorsed by just about all the politicians in Washington, although there's variety. One thing about interventionism, it really allows for all forms of intervention. Intervention over here, on personal liberty, economic liberty overseas, and all these things. So you have a tremendous variety of intervention, and a lot of people think this is an advantage. You can moderate it, and it can all work out well if you use common sense, and there will be a variety. Non-intervention is a little bit more demanding because you're either a non-interventionist or not. So if you're a non-intervention in economics, you can't say, well, we have to intervene A, B, C, D, but not over here. Well, then you're no longer a non-interventionist. This is quite a bit different than saying that the authoritarians have the right to preach their authoritarianism. And that's what has moved the world. Today, and the point this article misses, is they don't understand the importance of the ideological struggle, which has nothing to do with the political parties. Political parties and governments are a reflection of a prevailing attitude that the people accept. So you have intellectual leaders that present the case for liberty or present the case for authoritarianism and the need for the people to be taken care of. And if the people accept this and think they're going to be taken care of, then of course that's the way the country goes. And right now this transition is that the ideas of libertarianism are gaining tremendous strength. And it's for two reasons. They're more easily distributed today in this age of technology and through the internet. The other big thing is the total failure of economic intervention in personal liberties, and intervention overseas. All you have to do is look at the foreign policy of our government for the last 24 years and look at what's happening in Iraq and Ukraine and all around the world. So yes, there is a libertarian moment. It's existing. We're into it. But it's a transition. It's not a point. It isn't all of a sudden something changes by one election. The other thing that happens when a movement comes along and challenges the status quo, especially if the status quo has existed for 100 years, is there's a tremendous amount of resistance. And that's what happened on the early stages of the Tea Party movement. It started in 2007 because it was very, very libertarian. And all of a sudden the Republicans saw the necessity to either challenge or become part of the Tea Party movement, and then it got watered down. But that won't stop libertarianism, because the failure of interventionism will continue. It's going to continue. It's going to be a mess, and therefore changes will come, but they will change when there's enough people, enough intellectual leaders, and a generation of individuals who say, you know, we want a different kind of government. And of course, that's what's happening today. Because if you're under 30, you're more likely to be a non-interventionist than if you're over 50. Because people have been taught and conditioned. So especially the millennials today are very, very libertarian. They'd like to have their own lives back. They understand that economic policy has been a total failure, and Keynesian economics is silly, paper money is silly, these wars are foolish. And therefore, we're in the midst of the libertarian moment, but it's not in Washington, D.C. Washington is merely a reflection of the people's attitude. Even when you have the worst of governments, it has to be in many ways endorsed by the people, because the people can rebel even against the worst of tyrants. Sometimes it takes longer than you think it should. But that is what we're in the midst of. So I would agree there definitely is a libertarian moment. It has nothing to do really with the Republican Party. The momentum is going to continue, and believe me, it's an idea whose time has come, and we will bear the fruits of this ideology, which is probably the most important idea that mankind ever entertained, and that is the importance of the individual, the responsibility of the individual, and one based on peace and prosperity. And this, to me, is very appealing, so we're going to see good result in the 21st century. And I want to thank you for joining in today, and please come back to the Ron Paul channel soon.